What's up, everybody? My name is Indy, and the gentleman next to me is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting. And thank you, Powell Group, for sponsoring Indie Game Business. Yes, thank you. Welcome to Indie Game Business. And we're discussing the future of the video game industry. And I know that's a very vague title, but this is going to be super interesting. We've got Timothy Johnson. He's the founder of ExJin Studios. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of cool stuff and Discord games.
That's actually what I'm most excited about hearing about.
Yeah.
So, Timothy, welcome to the show. Let's start where we always love starting. Tell us how you originally got into the industry and then walk us through your career up to this point.
Will do. Hey, Jay and Indy, thanks for having me on. Okay, so it's, as you would expect, a little bit of a jig-jagged, complicated story. So I got into the industry kind of a slow burn. When it first started, it was the late 90s. And I was working with a program called Macromedia Future Splash, which would then eventually turn into something called Macromedia Flash. And this is while I was in college and I was playing around with things. And at the time, going into the 2000s, there was a lot of like false starts to social media. And so I was making just little, fun hobbyist projects, things like that. I was working for a company called Panasonic during the day. I was making things at night. And then you get a little bit deeper into the 2000s and MySpace really starts to take off. And so MySpace at the time was like, I don't know if for the younger people out there, you may not know, but you could put crazy nonsense like dancing Jesus and bells ringing. There was lots of things you could do, but free ringtones was a huge one. And so I would make for hire work. I would make these like free ringtone, like punch George Bush in the face and get a free ringtone kind of stuff. And I was making all these little games for like $200, $300 a pop. It was a little side gig. And at the time, my buddies were getting work I was in Atlanta at the time. And they opened a brand new website called cartoonnetwork.com. And so they were starting to build Flash games for the website. And I was working at that point, I was working for a company called ISS that got bought by IBM. So I was an IBMer. And I was moonlighting at night, making these games for Cartoon Network, like these one-offs for the website. And then fast forward to about 2006, 7-ish, when the iPhone comes out. And then they wanted Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and Nickelodeon all started. I'd made these industry contacts. They started giving me work of like, hey, can you build iOS games? This is like the very beginning of all of this. And I didn't even have a Mac. I was like a Linux guy. And so I had to like go buy it because you can't build for iPhone unless you have a Mac. Anyway, so I had to like drink the Kool-Aid and Stockholm Syndrome for that. And so, from there, I ended up having so much side work that I quit my day job and created a little game studio called No You Shut Up Games. And basically we were a work for hire licensed IP studio for years, making Adventure Time games and Scooby-Doo games and stuff for PBS and stuff for Sesame Street and Nickelodeon, like especially Nick Jr. games. I just started getting a lot of work, and before I knew it, I was making just tons of games, and that was my entry point. So if we go a little bit further, I was still in Atlanta, but I was making friends on the West Coast, and I was introduced to a new startup that was just starting. It was called Stupid Fun Club. And that was started by a guy named Will Wright. And he, for those of you, this would be fun. He's the author of Raid on Bungling Bay and Sim Golf, but he's known more for SimCity, The Sims 4. Having fun with Will there for a second. So anyway, I ended up talking to them because Will had just left EA and he had started this think tank called Stupid Fun Club. And I was kind of burnt out from making I was making like 5-6 games a year. I was getting a little burnt out, wanted something else. So talked to Will and the other co-founder, his name is Lauren Elliott. And so Will and Lauren were like, hey, why don't you move to California? Why don't you, move here and work with us? And so that started like the second phase of my game development career of being in California, working, building startups with Will, building startups with Lauren, doing a couple of on my own with the side projects. Most of these startups, two of them we exited great. The rest burned fabulous. Just such fiery crashes. It was awful. So I took a break from doing startups in my own game studio for a while. I went to WB Games. I was a technical director there for about 4.5 years. Got to work on a ton of really cool WB properties, IP. Will and Lauren decided they wanted to try it again with Gallium Studios, which is where I, up until right now, actually, I came in. This is about 5 years ago. I came in as a CTO there. And we started building Will's newest wacky creation called Proxy. We've been working on that for a while. And so, yeah, you're actually catching me at the time where I'm transitioning away from Gallium Studios. I'm jumping into ExJin. ExJin was a side project I've been doing for like the past year. And it's now caught enough steam to where it's like, okay, going back out on my own again. Let's try this. The abridged version.
A lot of folks get into the industry and they're like, what if I could, go all fanboy, fangirl on somebody and I'm like, look, it happens. The one time that I truly went fanboy on somebody after, and I've been in the industry for 5 or 6 years at that point, was walking into E3 one year in LA. And as I'm waiting across the, road, Will Wright was standing next to me, and I was like, oh, because that was like my huge, gamer crush growing up was, basically anything that Will Wright did. And I guess anything that you worked with him on too. But that was the one time I really felt like I just went full blown fanboy was when I was standing next to Will Wright walking into E3. So ExJin is Discord games.
That's right.
So let's start there, because I'm going to be selfish and run this interview, and that's what I want to hear about.
Right on.
I was in. You were at DreamHack. You were pitching to the indie investor pitch session that they were doing there. I was one of the judges, and that's when I first saw this, and I was like, oh, that sounds actually really cool. I mean, it's wide open blue ocean opportunity here. Why are you doing games in Discord?
Yeah. My wife asked me the same thing. No, let me, so let me tell you. So as I said, this started as a side project, and so it's so cool that you were at DreamHack too, because we can talk about this firsthand accounts. DreamHack was actually my litmus test to see if this was a viable thing. Is this something that can actually be turned into its own, make a business out of it, really? But it started about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, where we're playing games in Discord, like company-wise, like we're playing games in Slack, we're playing games in Discord, and when I say playing games in Discord at that time, it was like, hey, we're all going to jump onto Among Us, right? So everyone join a huddle, or everyone join a Discord call. We'll all fire up the same game that we bought separately, or a Jackbox or something. Maybe one person would share the screen. And that's what everyone does. Like when you say, I'm going to play a game in Discord, I think that's exactly what everyone thinks, because that's what you do. And so that's where the idea started coming into of like, well, why couldn't I just have a game and this is before the Discord activities really launched as well. And I was thinking, like, what if, we could actually play a game directly here, especially asynchronously, because I'm sure other people experience this as you just get older. The amount of like time I have for a synchronous game session and trying to herd the cats together is getting harder and harder for me. And so asynchronous games where you could, Jay, you make a move, I'll be notified, but I don't have to do anything for another 30 minutes or 2 hours. And then I could go make a move, or, those kinds of like back and forth kind of games, especially if it's more than 2 players, if you can do like a big group. That's where I was thinking, maybe I could start building some games there. And then the final push to actually go and build it and try it. I had some good friends of mine who also left Warner Brothers, started a very highly funded studio. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. they had an NFL and an NBA license. And they, in 2 years, they built 2 games. One was an NFL game, one was an NBA game. And these were mobile games. And these games were, especially the NBA game was just polished. It was so good. And it had a player's license. So you had actual players. And this game was so good. And it didn't monetize. Like they could not get a user base. And so they ended up having to close the studio, which was really, really sad. So I'm having a beer with these guys, talking about what could have been great. And especially in mobile games, like when you're trying to get players, there's this thing called user acquisition we're all familiar with. And your user acquisition dollars that you're spending, obviously you want to spend as little as possible. But like for most at Warner Brothers, like $3 or $4 spend wasn't unheard of. It could get up as high as like $11 or $12 before we started talking about killing the game. And for their user acquisition dollars, it was something like $35. And this is only like a year and a half ago, right? Which is just, you can't spend $35 per player, especially when the LTV on that player is only going to be like $2.
Yeah.
So obviously they had to shutter the game, which is just a shame. It was such a good game. And that's where I was thinking, people are already in Discord. Like as of right now, there's 200 million monthly active users in Discord. They're already there. And getting people to install a mobile app right now is incredibly difficult. As I was just saying, $35 you have to throw at someone before they install it. So the getting an experience that didn't require an install, that was nice and slippery to where it could already be where they already are. That's where the Discord idea came from, of like, what if you could play right here? They're already here. Their friends are already there. They've already built a community or have a community of people. What if they could just press a button or a / command and start the game and then play together? That's where this started.
It immediately reminds me of Civilization 2 back in college, or it might have been even Civ 1, because that we would have Civ running in our dorm room, and in between us going to classes, like I make a move and I go to class, and my roommate makes a move and he goes to class, and so there's something definitely there. And like you said, there's 200 million users, so that's how it started. How's it going?
Yeah, so DreamHack was a real eye-opener. So we use DreamHack. So Andrew Greenberg, who's a buddy of mine, he's the president of the Georgia Game Developers Association, GGDA. I should be able to say that better. He is an old buddy. We've worked alongside each other for years. And he saw what I was doing. He was like, hey, why don't you come to DreamHack? I'll help you get a booth, and you can try this out, because didn't really have, getting the word out is, as everyone knows, getting the word out on a new thing is hard. So we set the booth up, put a couple of monitors up, had some music playing, and let all the people come through at DreamHack. And it was the game that we launched with. So the platform, we call it Chat Arcade, because it's a bunch of different games. The idea being that if you subscribe to Chat Arcade, you could play, any of the games whenever you wanted. We can get more into that later. But the launch game is called Tribunal Tactics, and this is a strategy game that you could play. I think the max player is actually 98 players, but I wouldn't recommend trying more than 15 or 20. It gets a little chaotic. But the idea is it's a strategy game where it's built to be asynchronous. It's built to be round based. So the rounds, and it's up to you. You can configure it so where the rounds are, 2 minutes long, or the rounds are 24 hours long. But in the round, it gives everyone a chance to get a lay of the land, see what they want to do, make their moves, conspire with each other's. In fact, it's a very and what's really fun about the game is that it's very political, but that has nothing to do with the game systems itself. Like the political intrigue is all just you guys like conspiring to backstab your friends. And so we launched at DreamHack with that, and instantly we found our audience. The audience is content creators, people who want to be, streamers, or just want to create interesting content for YouTube or TikTok. and they want to have things that they can do with their communities, because on YouTube there's lots of creators where if you join their Patreon, then you can get into their Discord and you can hang out with them and talk about stuff, right? And they're looking for ways to engage with their communities that they're growing and grow the communities even more. And so that was who I thought this would be for, and I was right. Instantly, everyone who, especially the young creators who are just starting to build communities, like this is a great way to get engagement, get more. You've got people in there playing games with you, and the way that Discord unlocks features, you can buy it with Nitro, but if you want to get especially if you have a public Discord, the engagement counts that they're looking for is like people actually sending messages, people actually using slash commands, people actually not muting your channels. And that's all being calculated to give you extra features in your communities. And this is just a community engagement machine. And so instantly, I gave away a bunch of free subscriptions. I gave away like 400 or 500 free subscriptions, and everyone started playing the games together. But then I also realized that the game that we had built wasn't exactly the game that most of our creators wanted, because our creators wanted something that was still very engaging, but wasn't so backstabby. Imagine you're like, oh, this YouTuber is awesome. I'm going to spend $5 a month on their Patreon. Oh, look, they just murdered me. That's not the experience most people wanted. And so we started creating other games that are still, communal, very social, where you can still type in your own information that then gets rendered on the screen, because people love to customize insults and taunts and things like that. And so that's where the new games are coming in. Chat Wars is another one that's coming out soon, that we're building for that audience. And yeah, so that's how it's going, is that we're slowly getting the word out. Our engagement of people playing is really, really high. And that's kind of just proving it out to where if you put these games in your own Discord communities, it's just a more engagement.
So if you gave away hundreds of, free subscription and free keys, how is it monetizing?
Great question. So it's a little complicated, but let me explain it. So Patreon, the answer is Patreon. So the idea, and we're still playing with this because we're not sure what the right prices are, or what the right packages are. This is the actual hard part of game business, is doing the business part.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I know. Yes.
Making the game, that's easy. Selling the game. So in Patreon, if you join the Chat Arcade Discord, you link your account. Basically, it's a slash command in our channel where you do /link, and then it takes you and you link your Discord account to your Patreon account. And so whenever you go to create a new game or add one of our all the games are bots. It's a Discord bot. So every time you add a bot to your Discord server, it checks to see who you are, checks to see what subscription level do you have. I think we've got 4 or 5 different subscription tiers, where like the I think $3 is the smallest one, which is like you can put one game in your server, or maybe it's $5. The point of the story is that you can put one in, you can play it, but then as we bring more games on, you can remove that game, put another game in. Like, we don't penalize you for it. And so that's the monetization, is go through Discord, go through Patreon, sign up for one of the tiers, and then you can get access to the games. And when you start a game, so you use a / command, like /start game, it'll just go and check and be like, hey, are you able to do this? And if you're not, it'll just be like, politely say, hey, you should probably go subscribe to the Patreon.
Dear freeloader, you need to actually pay for using this. So, I mean, statistically then, because I mean, this could also, obviously, if it works for content creators, it could obviously work for game developers that are looking to grow their audience and engage them and keep them there. Do you have any statistics yet? I mean, are you seeing any trends in what the stickiness, what the engagement is for once you add these games to the Discord?
So there's 4 different game studios that I know of that are currently playing games. And the stickiness is fun. Like the first 2 weeks, there's a lot of play. There's a lot of games. There's a lot of playing. And then it kind of dies off because, they played the game and now they want to go play Helldivers or whatever they're going to do. But then it starts to ramp back up. And this is like for game studios like that are getting a follow. And these are small indie studios. So their followings are a couple of hundred players in there. But people will talk about it for 10x longer than they actually played the game, because especially this first game that we put out is pretty backstabby. So people will talk about that game session for weeks. And I think, potentially some friendships have been ruined. It's great.
Nice. Oh, that is absolutely. I remember. Going back to the original Warlords game on PC, my neighbor and I didn't speak for weeks over a couple of games on that, and they ended up being also involved in the Civilization we did in college too. So that's always a good sign. It's like you've made Munchkin for Discord, basically.
Yes. Munchkin, Mario Party is another friendship ender.
Oh God. Yeah, that's an easy one. Our house.
I just saw you access 30 terrible memories.
Yeah. So, by doing this, is this something that you're seeing as a long-term goal now? As you're building it up and you're getting, obviously, if you're still trying to figure out the actual payment model, I'm guessing you're not exactly in the black on this yet, but
no, not yet.
I do love. I love the idea, and that's what you were talking about before we went live about. When I saw it at DreamHack as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we'll get to the plugs later on. We dropped the Patreon in chat already, but is this something that you've seen that it's going to have traction, or is it still very much a wait and see type thing?
I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that the hockey stick's going to slowly continue to go upwards. The more and what I've been doing is we've been learning more about how people want to engage, how people want to play these games, and so what we're moving into now is adding some of them as synchronous experiences that you do in a Discord activity as well. So. Because that was one of the people who wanted a more twitchy experience, people who want to play, Helldivers together or things like that. They were looking for something with a, not just updates in a chat stream, right? Which is what these games kind of are. It's just you're in a chat stream and it's going to give you updates and give you options. But it is kind of a static experience. They wanted something that was much more like there's a game. And so we're moving into the Discord activities as well to broaden the portfolio of what we offer. Chat Wars is a game that it's a synchronous game. You're all together. The rounds are very short. It's a lot of, if I had to compare it to something, it's on the same par with Gartic Phone and Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity. Maybe more Cards Against Humanity, because people can type in whatever they want. Sometimes it gets a little but it's great because we have generative systems that react to it that then provide audio and things like that. So I think as we go here, it's going to be a nice upward trend. I don't know where the top is on this, but I'm pretty sure I can make a business out of this.
So, what are you using? Aside from people wanting less backstabby stuff, which honestly surprises me, because I figured, the internet being what the internet is, they would, be all about that. Are there certain genres that are going to lend itself better to these types of games, or are there completely new genres that you're actually creating because it is a different platform that you're working on?
Yeah, I would say, strategy is going to be like a 4X style strategy is always going to be able to play well here, because 4X just by its nature is kind of a turn-based asynchronous-y kind of feel, and that's what that first game, Tribunal Tactics, kind of is. It's not exactly a 4X, but it's a strategy game, and the backstabbiness, I think it was more the strategy part that was turning off some of the players, of like the conspiring to backstab kind of deal. And don't get me wrong, there's some people that are just 100% on board with this. They just can't wait to murder their friends. Et tu, Brute, just all over. But in the new ones, so where we're headed now, we've got 4 or 5 game designs that are, one is in alpha now, one is in early alpha. I would say it's not a new genre. I would say it is social party games with this new angle and this new technology that really hasn't been done yet. So I think it's a as opposed to a new thing, it's just a different shade of a similar party game genre.
So somebody in chat just noticed that they were trying to think of a game that they haven't been able to think of for years, and it was Warlords. And it was, yes, because there's a lot of us old people in there that are doing this. So James on YouTube has a question, and I'm going to actually add something on it because there's another one that I saw just as recently as this morning. He says, what's your take on YouTube playables? Do you think it'll have the same potential and player dynamics as Discord? And I will add LinkedIn games because I just learned this morning that you can play games on LinkedIn now.
So great question. And yeah, I think about this in the exact same kind of vein of, I don't even know what the daily actives on YouTube are. I'm sure they're big, but that is a huge market opportunity right there. Same idea. Go where the players already are. They're already in YouTube, like fired up right there. LinkedIn, God love them. That's great. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not against it by any means, but like that one, I mean, Netflix getting into games, I was like, okay, that makes sense. YouTube getting into gaming, I was like, okay, that also makes sense. But then LinkedIn today, I was like, well, that's just fun. That's just like a fun thing. That's just.
You're from the South. We can tell LinkedIn to bless their hearts, and we understand. But here's my thing. It's like Netflix actually put out real games, or what I call real games. I'm playing around on YouTube the other week and see that they have games on there now, and I click it and I go to it, and it's the same shit we made when the iPhone first came out. I mean, it's like every time one of these platforms opens up, they have to take 2 steps back to games that we don't play anymore and go from there. I mean, is that it? Maybe you have better insight into why do they do that?
Lowest hanging fruit, honestly. The development time for that little thing where the ball is just bouncing and you hold down and it smashes through bricks. Not a very hard game to make.
No.
Dev dollars wise doesn't cost a lot to make that game. There's not really any back end or networking to it except for a leaderboard, so it's a really inexpensive game to run. It's a time waster. They're looking for like, you're waiting for something or you're in the restroom or something. Like they're looking for some sort of 30 second to 90 second experience they can get away with, right?
It absolutely infuriates me. It's like you're trying to bring something new to some of these platforms, and you're going back to old shit. I mean, I just keep waiting for the next one to come from YouTube or LinkedIn to be like the Facebook Mafia Wars games or some basically turn-based text, whatever.
Did you see Netflix's first games they put out though? Like when Netflix
was it the same thing?
Very first game that they launched on their platform was the same tech demo I saw on the very first iPhone, which was the basketball where you have to keep pressing underneath it to keep it in the air. That's where they started. And to be fair, they started a brand new platform. It was like, we're going to be Netflix games. What do we got that can go right now? And then what have we got that we can, actually finance and fund? I can't talk too much about it, but I've got ex-WB people who are high up in Netflix I've talked to about like what they were trying to do, what they are doing, what they hope to do. But yeah, it starts with the bubble pops, man.
It just stands to reason to me that you're not going to get accurate analytics and feedback on the market if you're putting out games that are 2 generations behind what they should be. And that's the part that absolutely drives me, because trust me. I mean, because when you were working at Cartoon Network, we were actually doing, Flash games. We were one of the companies that got hired to do those games. And so I remember, we did a Billy and Mandy game and a, Grimm game and all this other. I know where we came from, but and to see a lot of these companies backpedal like that, and I'm like, okay, you're getting data, but if you would spend a little more and get some good games in here, you would get even better data. Just an absolute pet peeve of mine. The follow-up on that one is, do you see Discord games as something to extend or integrate with an existing game, or are they going to continue to be their own thing?
That's a good question. I could see it being an extension or being like a second screen or some sort of addition to your game. I could see that. Although my instinct would say to not start there, to start with something that's its own self-encapsulated experience. And the reason I say that is because there was a wonderful game at Cartoon Network called TKO, Titanic Kung Fu Bots, TKO. And one of the things that they did at the beginning was segment the player base of like single player versus 2-on-2 and 4v4 and like whatever. And the more options you give your players to deviate, especially if it's going to be a game where you want them to matchmake or you want them to play against each other, you want to make the least amount of cohorts as possible. That way they'll find each other. So that's where my mind went first, of like having a secondary experience that was in Discord or in YouTube or in one of these, maybe in LinkedIn. I would say maybe start with it being like its own deal, as opposed to a companion.
You could do something, make it a lore drop type thing if you want to do anything. But yeah, I can absolutely see what you're saying. When you start splitting everybody up into different options, then everybody gets spread out and people get in and look at it and go, well, there's nobody playing this. It's like, well, there are, but they're playing 14 other different versions or options of it at the same time. Exactly. From the Discord, I'd love to hear what you think about Web3 gaming. So where do you stand on, because my opinion of it is out there. Where do you stand on that? And is that something that you can see merging into these different integrations as well?
Yeah, good question. Divisive topic, and I'm going to give you my honest answer. So about 2 years ago, we at Gallium, we struck a deal with Gala Games, and we also had a partnership with Forte. Forte was a blockchain platform, and Gala Games is also a big blockchain platform. And so Gala has, and this was announced everywhere, and Will and me and Lauren went to their big expo in Vegas, which was really terrifying for me because it was in the height of the pandemic, but whatever. So my thoughts on Web3 gaming are, I want to say well-earned, because I was in that ecosystem. I saw what they were trying to do. I know that what we were trying to do with it. And I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm not gonna count it out by any means, because and Jay, since I feel like I can kind of already read your mind on this one, let me tell you about the Web3 player. That's who I met, right? Because Will went on stage and he did this big announcement, and then there was a big after party, and I was like, I'm gonna go meet these Web3 players. I want to know who they are. I want to know why they are, right? And what I learned about them is that a Web3 player is a different type of content creator in their heart of hearts. Let me qualify that. So you want to make money in games. Let's just say that's like a desire in your heart. You love games and you would love to do something in games. You would love to make some money in games. Well, there's step one. I'm going to go make games, right? Well, maybe you're not very artistic. Maybe you're not a very good programmer. Maybe that's just not what you want to do. You've got a good job doing your own thing, right? So making games itself, that's not for you. Or maybe you tried and failed, whatever the point is. So that's not you. So then the next step down is, well, I'll make game reviews. I'll make YouTube videos about games I love. That's a very saturated market, right? There's lots of people who do it, and there's lots of people who make money at it. But making well-produced videos, you know, knowing how to video edit, having a good speaking voice, being attractive. Like, not all these things are everybody, right? So maybe that's not it. And then it comes to, okay, what about streamers? Well, I'll just stream video games. I play video games. I have fun with my friends. We'll have some laughs. We'll stream it. Also cool. Also a way to do it. Requires a lot of time commitment. Streaming is a full-time job, right? Like, you have to stream all the time if you're going to make a living or make money at it. So maybe that's not there as well. And that's where the blockchain Web3 player comes in, of like, I don't want to do any of those parts, or, you know, maybe I do those parts, but this is another, to me, that's where the heart of those people is that they want to be involved in gaming. They would love to try to make some sort of revenue in gaming, or maybe have a piece of ownership in gaming. And that's where the Web3 games are, which I think, you know, in my own head, the mental gymnastics there, that's not a bad place to be, wanting to be part of games, right? Did they do it well? Nope. Did it pan out how anyone said it was going to? I don't think it did. Is it dead forever? I don't think so. So that's my take on it, is that I think there is a future in Web3. I think there's a future for that player, that person I just described. And I think there is a future there. I just don't know what it is yet.
My takeaway during the whole thing, and especially in the initial burst, you know, in our indie game business community, yeah, it was decisive. And I had people that were just like, because I would not come out and say, oh, all of these are a scam, up and just fucking left the community. Yes, there were a lot of scams in it. We all saw that.
Yes.
And the biggest issue I had with it the entire time is the companies that were trying to put these games out were not gaming companies. They knew fuck all in some situations about what makes a good game. They were just taking a game and slapping Web3 in it. That, you know, as we have now seen, was never going to work. But, you know, a well done game, you know, look, if Will figures out some way to put Web3 into the Sims, I'll play the shit out of that game. I mean, I know it for a fact. And a lot of the problems that, you know, we see, especially with digital card games and things like that, I think could be solved there. But the way that it was approached and the money that is still being thrown into it, you don't see as much of the investment here in North America and Europe. In Asia, there is still billions being thrown into Web3 games. So yeah, I think there is I'm with you. I think there is a future in it. They just ain't found it yet. But eventually somebody's going to throw enough money at that problem to solve it, and there will be. So that was like a huge digression there. So again, selfish question. When you're working with, you know, Will and a lot of these folks that have been around for, you know, even longer than I have, what is that origination process when it comes to ideating on new games? It's like, you know, how does that process typically play out, you know, working with folks like that?
Good question. Great question. So Lauren, I've name dropped him a couple of times. So Lauren Elliott, he's the CEO of Gallium Studios. He and Will have been partnered up on projects for a very long time. He was one of the first 10 employees at Bruderbund, and he is the author. He's the father of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
Oh my God, that is a name I haven't heard. Not Carmen Sandiego. I played that, but Broderbund, I have not heard that name in years. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I ideate with Lauren and Will, they both have their own flavor and they're both way. Lauren is very visual, very wants to get to the player compulsion of like the visual like rewards that are going to come in. That's kind of his bent. And Will is, hey, what's impossible? Let's do that. In fact, let's do that as hard as we can. And Tim, you go figure it out.
Well, I mean, that works. Why not? That's that fits perfectly there. And as you've gone through the different stages, I mean, because you are one of those wonderful people that's gone through the big companies, and then you're doing, the indie role as well. We've seen recently all the heartburn on the WB side with them, closing down these games, many of which I'm assuming you worked on. Then at the same time, we see a lot of these preservation companies coming up that are ranting and raving, and now we're seeing it with Ubisoft and the Crew and things like that. What are you dealing with when you're going through something that you've seen and you've loved and that has been successful, and then the company's just like, we're not going to do it anymore?
Yeah, it's a heartbreaker, for sure. In fact, the last direct involvement game that me and a couple of my fellow engineer team members at Gallium, it was called DC Legends. That just sunset a few months ago, and that was like the last one from the WBSF office. And so, yeah, it's heartbreaking. That game had a really good run. That was out for a long time. There's other ones, and this is one of the reasons why when Will and Lauren were like, when Gallium was starting up, I was at Warner Brothers at a pretty decent job there. But I was really frustrated with like some of the other games that got shut down. And that one was being shut down not even by the higher ups, but like just by poor management of the games and poor management of the expectations. So like even the top level, like the WB execs, they weren't even involved. They were just like, whatever you think. And then the numbers didn't work out. So there's a lot of like, watching someone drive your car and smash it into a wall.
Good analogy. Yeah.
Or drive it off a cliff, or just, you're like, we're from the South originally. One of those big Jeeps, the mudders, right? Like, you're like, no, I built a nice family sedan. Why are you doing this? Yeah, it's hard. The Harry Potter Wizards Unite, that was another one where I was really, I really felt the game could have been a lot more than it was. It was one that we spent a lot of time, a lot of money, even partnered up with Niantic to make it, because it was like a Pokemon Go style game.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up using like their back end tech for not Pokestops, for the whatever we called them, the places where you would go to the taverns. But once again, it was just kind of poorly managed. The expectations weren't great. Studio leadership was a little messy on it. And so when Will and Lauren were like, hey, you want to go build something independently again? I was like, yes, I do.
Do you think that we're seeing a deeper divide go between the AAA studios and the indie studios, with so many of the companies, like Warner Bros. Prime example is, the Arkham Asylum entire Batman line. And then they pivot that studio from doing a single player game to doing a live service game, and it didn't go good. Are you seeing that the bigger companies and these AAA companies are going to continue doing more of those live service games, be damned if they work or not, and leaving single player titles? Or do you think that's going to come back together? Where do you see?
Good question. Rocksteady is that's a hard one, right? Rest in peace, Rocksteady. Like, they were, just going back to Arkham Asylum is like one of the greatest games ever made. I loved all of their work, but like that one was just so good. So in Warner Brothers' case, I was there for the first acquisition, and then a lot of my friends are still there during this second acquisition, right? So the first time was AT&T bought it, right? And so when AT&T bought Time Warner, there was this whole push of like, HBO needs to make 1,000 times more shows, and then we need to make Warner Brothers make a bunch of games for those shows to support it. Like, that was their idea. And another game that I worked on that was just could have been great. It was the Westworld. Westworld season 1 had just wrapped, and we were already making designs for the game. And Westworld is a game that I think we had in the marketplace for 6 months. And we had to shut it down. So that was like AT&T, and now Discovery buying it and parting it out is another. It's another thing where that really feels like top-down decisions and pivots. These games take so long to make that you have one person at the head of the division, and then they get changed out for a new division head who has a different sensibility. And to your point earlier, none of these guys know anything about games. In fact, a lot of them don't know anything about entertainment. They're just, but they'd love to take credit for it.
Yes. I was actually recording a podcast yesterday with another friend of mine, and when he said, "What are you playing lately?" and I rattled off like 8 games, and he's like, "I think that's more than anyone has ever said." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm one of those rare executives of this industry that actually plays games." It's like it is. So, I mean, we see this, and it is a lot of frustration, especially these bigger companies, because there's nothing you can do about it. Whoever the new CEO is going to change whatever's going on, or you get somebody in the management food chain above you, and they need to put their rubber stamp on something and show that they're worth it, and they change a bunch of shit. And then, you go out and you start a new indie studio, and we see that cycle happen a lot. Mm-hmm. What have you learned? What are the core things that you've taken away over the years in starting a indie studio, especially coming right out of a AAA world, but just in general, tips for starting that indie studio from scratch?
Yeah. Let me tell you the stark similarity between the AAA side of it and the indie side of it is that they both have the exact same problem, which is, how do I get people to actually play, to install it, to engage with it, to spend money on it? Like both of them. I mean, the only difference is resources. On the AAA side, you've got a lot of people who have been doing marketing and have been doing radio spots and doing different buys for different ad buys for years, right? And when you're on the indie side, you're Googling it, like, how do I do marketing? Or maybe you're asking ChatGPT, and I'm not even sure what it's going to tell you. But that's like at the core of it, everyone has the same problem, which is, how do I get this thing in front of people and want to buy it? What I like about the indie side of it, and the AAA side needs to catch up, is that the indie side, you can pivot and you can change so much more quickly due to market forces, due to different things that are just happening in the game communities of what tastes are. I think Fortnite's a really good example of everyone. Fortnite, and Fortnite wasn't even the first. It was PUBG that was like, even PUBG wasn't the first.
I was going to say, even PUBG wasn't the first one. Yeah.
Right. But PUBG was like, the first one that I heard about that was like a battle royale like that. And then Fortnite does it, and then everyone tries to do it. So AAA is going to be a lot of Johnny-come-latelys, a lot of chasing, where were we 2 years ago, and can we build it and ship it 2 years from now? Where on the indie side, you can be like, making, and well, I mean, if you're scoping your project properly of trying to build something that a small team can do, then you can get things out there faster. But the similarity is that once you finish the thing, now the real work starts.
Yeah, and it always comes down to the marketing and telling the whole world that your game exists. And that part, yes, there's a difference in resource size, the tens of millions that, the big studios can put into it versus the tens that a lot of, indies can put into it. But that ability to pivot and that ability to pay attention to what the market is doing is a huge thing, because it's like, I remember sitting in a lot of these, meetings with funds and things like that after PUBG and Fortnite came out, and the big AAA companies were still not taking it seriously. I mean, I don't know the actual number, but how long was it between PUBG dropping and Call of Duty Warzone dropping? I mean, it's years before they take it seriously. Whereas something like Vampire Survivors drops, and within 6 months, there's already other iterations of that formula coming out there, because indie teams can pivot a bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a preference? I know there's pros and cons to working on both sides of the industry. Do you, if all things being equal, do you have a preference on which side you'd rather be on?
Yeah, indie all the way. I hate doing what I'm told when I don't agree with it. I hate it so much, And I've worked for some people who were highly regarded in their field, and I'm like, how is that? Because these decisions you're making, I'm reading the same data you are. Why did you make that decision? And why do I have to do it?
You know the old rule of fuck up and move up. I mean, that's like that's like one of the classic growth strategies in this industry. We've all seen it, but yeah.
It hurts me how true that statement is. Yeah. All right, kids, you want some advice? Don't do a good job. Just do a bad job. But tell people, do it enthusiastically. Do a bad job enthusiastically. Apparently, that's all you need.
Without naming names, this is just going to be fun. If you'll play along, what are a couple of the craziest shit you've seen happen at a AAA studio when you were sitting back going, "No, that's not how you do this"?
Let me see. I'm trying to take away as much incriminating evidence as I can.
We should make this into. Can you do a game like this on Discord? What is the stupidest shit you've seen happen?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, just a weekly show where you have to answer honestly. Okay, so here's a great one. So we had this game. It was a very large IP, and it was doing not that great. The people that it was keeping, but not really. And it was a kind of I don't want to give away what it was, but it had a mechanic that was very straightforward. The game loop was very straightforward. And then we're told, well, let's just put a match 3 inside it.
Oh, okay.
And so we ended up having to build like a match 3 mechanic to put in there because the person who was able to make that decision had just played a match 3 and had so much fun with it. And they were like, well, that's what it needs.
Oh my God.
And one of the main problems, not just at Warner Brothers, but in AAA, is this whole lack of, not lack of, what do you call it? They are convinced that this mechanic from this game is something that we need to clone, right? And what they don't really understand is that mechanic works in that game because it's got this system and this system and this other system that support it. So if you just take the mechanic and put it into another game, but you didn't bring those systems along with it, now it's out of place and now it doesn't work. But they can't, their design mentality isn't of that. So instead it's just, no, just copy what they did. It's like, well, we need to copy the whole thing or it's not going to work. And they're like, no, just copy that part. That's the only part I want. If that makes sense.
Oh yes, no. It does to me because I've seen that exact same shit happen repeatedly. Whoever the executive is in charge. They played something this weekend. They suddenly think it's the greatest thing ever, and the next thing you know, we have Bubble Bobble in a first-person shooter. So yes, I completely. I'll tell you the one that stands out to me, and this is actually one of the ones where I was wrong. So, and I'll help bring this episode back full circle by doing this. The Warlords franchise from years and years ago. Mm-hmm. SSG did them, played the first 2. The third one a little more real time. It was like, it was originally turn-based strategies. And I'm at a conference in London and their agent sits down with me, an agent who I'm still good friends with to this day. And he pitches me the new iteration of that franchise. And it's a puzzle match 3 game. And I wanted to get angry. I wanted to cry. Every emotion going through. I'm like, you're taking one of my most beloved franchises of my youth, and you're going to turn it into a damn match 3 game. And I was wrong, because Puzzle Quest ended up being one of the biggest innovators in this industry and spawned God knows how many other, hugely selling games in that genre. But it was one of those things that I looked at and I'm like, you can't just take that and turn it into a match 3 game. It's not going to work. And I was wrong. It worked really damn well. So but it is, I mean, and I think part of that is why we see a lot of that cycle in the industry of going to AAA, being, like you, it's like, I cannot believe y'all think this is a good idea. Oh, well, see, it wasn't. And then going back to the indie thing, and then inevitably, it's like, as things grow, you can get pulled back or acquired or however back into the AAA, and then everything starts all over again. Thank you so much. We're going to see if anybody's got any final questions. We're going to pop them up there, and then we're going to let you go because we are at the end of our hour. And I thought I saw someone typing one in chat. In the meantime, tell us where we can go to support ExJin and integrate all of these wonderful games into our Discord to help all these developers grow their communities.
Yes, so go to exjin.com. That's EXJIN.com. It's a very simple landing page at the moment, but at the bottom there's links to the Discord server. That'll get you into Discord, and there we've got tutorials, we've got videos, we've got all sorts of stuff for you to come in. You can just start playing games with us right away. You can learn more about what we're doing. Later today at 1:30 Pacific, so in just a few hours, we're going to be doing a playtest of an alpha version of Chat Wars. So we're going to be streaming that and showing that off. And Chat Wars is it can be a very funny and slightly raunchy game. So I hope to see you guys there.
Don't bring the kids.
Don't bring the kids.
Yes. Awesome. Timothy, thank you so much. Love what you do. Love what you've done over the years. You're always welcome here. Dan, I can like summon him.
Hello. Sitting there waiting to be summoned. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been super interesting, and I hope that is super helpful for you developers that are thinking about this kind of stuff and processing it. And that's awesome that you love how Jay always goes, Dan. It cracks me up. And it's awesome that you named Warlords, and he'd been thinking about that, or that person been thinking about that for 15 years. We accomplished something.
Because it was a damn good game.
Yeah, we accomplished
before
something.
They turned it into a match 3.
Yeah.
Yet never been more popular except as a match 3.
And to be fair, Steve and their agent Ed was on the show years ago, and I called him out on it, and he still didn't care. I was like, I'm still waiting for an actual honest to God turn-based Warlords game again. And that was 4 years ago. So we still don't have it. I'm not bitter at all.
At all. So check out our Discord. If you're not on our Discord, discord.gg/IndieGameBusiness. And also all of our links are on IndieGameBusiness.com. And check out the merch. You want some Indie Game Business merch from there as well. And if you sign up for the newsletter, IndieGameBusiness.com, you'll get a publisher list and an investor list. And you'll be in this awesome newsletter that our amazing community manager, Ash, sends out every week.
To 11,000 people.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Nice.
It's a great newsletter for sure. All right. Thank you, Timothy. Everyone have an amazing weekend. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks so much, guys.